Tell me when. Because the mayor is going to be standing here. The mayor is like, I may have to move that. So like if I don't address you, address you back here. The mayor will invite usually. Hey, how are Hello? Yeah, you're right. There will be a sign-in sheet dropped in soon. The city to be able to follow up with anyone afterwards. Yeah. Make it too easier. No problem.
So this one is
So the mayor and the chief council, you will trying to get them to work with the speaker. They want to back this. They want
Does that matter to you? Maybe it should matter.
that makes sense.
Hello.
Testing.
Testing.
No. That camera is here. It's here. Hello, everyone. Oh, that was close. We'll be getting started soon, so please just let's settle. Just a few minutes. We'll wait for everybody to warm up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would like to have a regular kind of a part of the conversation, right? Yeah. I spoke to them. They said I can. Okay, I'll give it to you. I'll write each one. I'll just put it in the
So if everybody could please take their seats so we can get started. The mayor has a hard stop at 8:15, and so we really want to try to get this thing going. Okay, technical difficulties, of course, right? Welcome, everybody. My name is Mimi Kirchnet. I'm the president of the Hyde Park Neighborhood Association, and I'm here as your convener tonight to welcome everybody to Hyde Park, to our muni. I want to welcome the mayor's folks and Chief Jemison and elected officials. I see our new city councilor, Enrique Pepin, Ben Weber. Oh, Julie Mejia. Okay, great. City councilor at large, Mejia. And lots of other folks. I know Cece Graham is here, our new ONS rep for Hyde Park. And so I just wanted to welcome everybody and let you know kind of the genesis of this meeting. Many people have been having conversations about a lot of the new zoning proposals coming out of the BPDA, and there's a lot of concerns and questions. And so we submitted a letter, we had 113 signatures to the mayor's office and to Chief Jemison to ask them to please join us on the 29th community conversation about the zoning proposals. And so that is where we find ourselves. So once again, the process tonight is we'll have some brief framing, and both myself and Marilyn Supplement from Community Input Board will be co-facilitating the meeting. There'll be some commissioners and some stakeholders who will speak and ask some questions, and then we'll have Mayor Jemison present their vision, and then folks can ask them questions, and then we will do a wrap up. And I just wanted to let us know that the goal of the meeting this evening is to hear from neighbors, to listen to each other, and to try to in terms of the issues that are on the table. We want to be respectful. If people can please agree to disagree. There's a lot of strong feelings at the time, and we want to make sure that everybody can speak and everybody can listen to what other folks say. And so, just briefly, we in Hyde Park, we are one of the neighborhoods to go through the streets small planning neighborhood process, and we welcome that. But we really are looking to have a fuller conversation about the zoning document and really listen to and hear from the community about where this is going. So thank you everybody for being here. Turn the agenda over to James Michelle, who is member of HBNA and Neighborhood Association, Train Ledge Woods Coalition, to do some centering, and then we'll move on to Marlon to do some framing of the meeting.
Thank you, Mimi. Hello, everyone. My name is James Michelle. I live just a couple blocks away on the New Ponset for the last 35 years. I am a proud dues-paying member of the Hyde Park Neighborhood Association, and the group asked me to open the container. So Mimi stated the purpose, which is that we are going to talk about zoning. I think the manner in which we do it is up to us. This is a group of people that have never, this is unique. We've never been together before, and I'm just going to invite you to take a deep breath and think for a moment about how you want to show up and what we might collectively accomplish. I'm inclined to paraphrase Melvin. I think love is the question, love is the answer. I want to also start by saying that our beloved city of Boston is on land stewarded for generations by the Massachusetts people. The settler founders of the city are responsible for the theft of these lands and for cultural violence against indigenous people and people of African ancestry. This city was also financially supported in its origins by merchants profiting from slavery and slave-produced commodities. I find it useful to begin, and this is the people's meeting, to begin spaces with an acknowledgement of our history, because we all have a lot of work to do in terms of healing and repair. So I invite you all collectively to take a deep breath right now and just be here. Now, we are self-organizing, so I'm going to make you, we're going to spend 2 minutes, turn to somebody that you don't know particularly well, introduce yourself, tell them about your maternal grandmother for a minute, tell them why you're here. That's the problem. I'll give you 1 minute. And then I'll give you the next. All right. All right, that's 1 minute. Switch. Other person. Tell them who you are, your maternal grandmother, and why you're here. Good energy. Time to stop. Really, I'm not kidding. I knew we unleashed a monster. If this goes wrong, we'll stay together again. So I'm going to turn it over to Solomon from the Community Input Board of Hyde Park to do some training. Hello, hello, hello. How y'all doing? Everyone good? Sitting here. Very happy to see everybody here. Right, you all great. Louder? How's that? So yeah, I want to welcome
the Hyde Park Municipal building. We're here to discuss a few important things that we need to really have a discussion about here in Hyde Park. And we're so happy to have people, the mayor, Chief Jemison here, as well as many community leaders and people that I know and love, and some new people. So I'm very excited about that. I think I want to start off by saying, well, first of all, how many of us in here, right, are involved in their community, passionate about their community, involved in neighborhood organizations? Yeah. Right. What of us? Almost all of us are part of this group. Now, remember when we start this conversation that we're here for the people that cannot be here. People who are working, doing homework, making dinner, working long hours, pay rent. We gotta do as we know Boston do, right? So let's give it up for ourselves for being here and leading those people in this discussion. So we're talking about buildings. People don't know me, like I said, I'm Marlon Solomon. I'm part of the community youth board of Hyde Park. Also, founder of a nonprofit here in Hyde Park called African American Culture Initiative. I'm a civil engineer, and I used to do a lot of construction project management. When you do this management, you're thinking about 50 to 100 years that you're building. In fact, there's a beautiful building across, a little small building right across from the library, and it has 1924 on it. So it's about 100 years old. And in 1924, it doesn't say the date, doesn't say the month, but yes, it does say that. When those people were building, right, they did not know or have an idea of what it would be like here in 2024. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Decisions we make, we going into this zoning process, we're here to see what will happen in the next 50 to 100 years. And we want to come together in unity, right? Beautiful, brotherliness, everybody looking, smiling, be happy. We may disagree, but we will disagree and respect one another. We'll come together to build, and we'll talk about some difficult conversations. Some of these, right? Positive things that have happened, negative things that have happened, but regardless, we're all here on the process. And we're here to talk about this a lot in Hyde Park, a beloved community, right? A place where everyone is welcome, a place where everybody has a voice and everybody is heard, all right? And that's what we want to be doing here today. Now, as one of the founding members of CIB, how the CIB actually got started, right? So I don't know if you guys are familiar with Hyde Park, but down the street there's a school, Boston Prep Charter School, right? And I got involved as a community person because my kids go to the school, and then there was a Burger King that was placed across, right? And now we're not going to talk about why the Burger King was there, whether you agree or disagree. That's not the issue. The issue was that the process did not include parents of kids that went to that school. I was on the panel. And it was a shock. And all of us came together and banded together, and it's beautiful to see that after all these years, we're now communicating on all years here. So thank you for hearing the call. Okay? And the reason why we're here today is that there are other parents, other communities, that something else won't come up and they don't know about. So we want to talk about how we're going to get to that point. And we have a great discussion that we're going to have today with Chief BPDA, have Mayor came down, shows the commitment, right? Commitment to making sure that there's adequate community engagement, right? So we're not gonna go, I wanna set the frame, like I said. We wanna make sure, I came here because of once I heard about meeting and how things went down with the first meeting and people didn't really quite get the message. And remember, these are the community leaders that didn't really understand. I'm a civil engineer and I wasn't going, oh my God, 180 something pages. You want to know how we can tell the mom that's making our homework, that's doing her homework right now, making the macaroni and cheese right now, bringing her kids to bed, doing all that. We want to get that message out to her. That's why, so that we can start that process. We want to understand how does our community want to look in 100 years. It's going to be looking more like downtown, maybe a small town. It's going to be looking like skyscrapers or the North End. These are the questions that those people that built that building 100 years ago, they wanted to ask. We have an opportunity to frame that here today. Let's get started with the program. And I will first of all bring up, now we have some voices of leaders and stakeholders. And before I get started, some housekeeping, Mohammed, I did not forget. Okay, we have a sign-in sheet, right, in the Zoom. So if you want, the city of Boston wants to be able to reach out to you afterwards. So they do have a sign-up sheet, and we'll get that information out to everybody. We will be taking questions once we get to the Q&A section, 2 at a time, 2 from community here and 2 from the online community. You know that we're living in a hybrid world right now, right? So we got a whole line of people online watching on Zoom. All right. So we'll get started. Community, with the voices of the conveners, and we'll have with representing the community input board of Hyde Park, Scott Beatty. Scott.
Good evening, Mayor Wu, Chief Jemison. Nice to see you both. I'm Scott Beatty, 34-year resident and board of Hyde Park, and tonight I'm representing the Community Input Board. The Community Input Board, as you heard from Marlon, its goal is one of collaboration, where it's possible for all of the Hyde Park community's voices contribute to decision-making affecting our beloved community. It's important we first that the Community Input Board is united in its desire to increase density, housing, and development for our neighborhood to thrive. We recognize that we have an urgent and necessary task of increasing housing for our great city. We want to do our part at the speed of trust. The implications of these zones as of right for the Perrysburg district are not yet clear to us, and we recognize that they may not be reversible once seated. We therefore are respectfully asking that there be a 6-month extension on the commentary to the amendment. There seems to be an educational barrier that we still need with your help to overcome. This will be an opportunity to build a civic consensus around the new zoning article. Understanding who decides these fundamentals going forward and what community involvement would be, which will much more transparent in an approach. People can conceive the issues of the true community vision. I would ask that some sort of quantitative and qualitative metrics be developed so that we can assure that our community as it reaches a targeted goal of outreach during this 6-month period of commentary extension. For example, knowing that, say, 65, 75%, or some agreed upon target of Hyde Park residents and businesses owners have been outreached and responded in multiple languages which feel more equitable. The Community Input Board realizes the States and Squares initiative template that will affect all of Boston neighborhoods, and we know your task is an easy one. We're amongst the first to go through the process, and our trepidation is not due to our lack of desire for change, but just our current lack of knowledge and desire for collaboration. We know with your good stewardship, we will garner and move forward the streets and squares of the successful Hyde Park in Boston. Thank you both so much for your consideration.
The next convener is Rodney Singleton, who is the co-chair of the Highland Park Project Review Committee from Mexico.
Thank you, Mr. Jemison, Mayor Wu. My name is Rod Singleton. I've lived in Roxbury my entire life, 62 years. I'm here to address you this evening. I guess I'm also recognized as representing Roxbury as well, so just tip it off. So Roxbury groups and committees already resilience, equity, and we don't really need a city to tell us how it's done. It's been our call to action in the 60s when the PRA swept through Roxbury, the South End, raising buildings and displacing over 5,000 families like mine. Since then, we learned never to rely on agencies to deliver just development to our neighborhoods. Instead, we've spent years in project review committee, impact advisory group, neighborhood association, and collaborating with the city, and together we work. We've crafted requests for proposals, positive housing, for open and green space, preserving tree canopies, reduce heat islands, intentional language and developers bids committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's essence to grow and share economic wealth with historically disenfranchised folks in our city, and intentional language and efforts around affordability that not only abate displacement, but also build wealth through homeownership where we can. Yet, given our record, let's working together. This administration, meanwhile, radical ideas, once promised to dismantle the BPDA, Glenn now seeks to strengthen the powers of state agencies currently weakening BPDA through street zoning that replaces neighborhood vision with top-down vision. Strengthening urban renewal power sends a clear message that we're not trusted to plan our own future. Unfortunately, the lack of trust goes both ways. Bostonians over the era of having lost our urban renewal. I'm certainly not. And I'm determined that more the family should have that mess to endure. Other indicators don't us either. We see the risk to long-term affordability by moving the O'Brien from Roxbury to West Roxbury, where by not having a school committee where the constituents overwhelmingly know it's best, or by not making enough moves to contract and recognizing that there's a linkage between how the spend is shared, Black and brown folks in the city, and housing affordability. What we ask tonight is this: how does the administration engaging with our neighborhood organizations to ensure that our experience and perspective on equitable, affordable development in our communities?
I would just say that we're, because everybody has a lot to say, if people can just try to cut your comments in half, because we want to give the mayor and Chief Jemison the ability to have their full time. So thank you, Rodney. The next speaker is Jean Dubois, who is the Executive Director of Southwest Boston Community Development Corporation, which represents Hyde Park and Roslindale.
Hello. I've been here 43 years now, so I've been here longer than Scott. But I was a newcomer back in the day, and fell in love with Rossendale and Hyde Park. I go to church here at Presbyterian Church. So we've watched, and I was an organizer years and years ago with Matt's Fair Share. But, you know, their organizing was a little strange. And, but, you know, over the years, I think organizing is, and I spent 20 years in Dorchester as the director of Dorchester Bank of Economic Development. So the thing about Hyde Park was this CDC had a reputation for burning through directors every 5 years or every 3 years because it was so small. And they built, there was the 8 units on American Legion and then the new housing right now by the Fairmount Station. The problem was there was just not enough happening. You know, it was too hard to get going. They were small, couldn't raise much money. So we worked on something we did in Dorchester with a private guy who had cash, and we bought and kept people in 9 different buildings. So it was 68 families that won't ever have to be displaced. And that was the goal, is keep people who want to stay. And these were all very mixed. Our board is mixed. We have 15 board members. More than half of those people are people of color, and our officers as well. So I think the main point I want to make, and the board told me I'm supposed to say these things tonight. It wasn't just me. It was, they decided what they wanted me to say. That, and it's something I've believed in all my life, that people have to be respected and they have to be heard. And even in Dorchester, our real estate folks would want to get zooming along and start a project. And I say, no, we have to go out and see the neighbors. It's their neighborhood. It's about respect. So the board says, we want something like Scott said, 6 months. I know, Mary, it seems like a long time, but it's about having a breath so that people can really understand what these S0s and S5s and S whatever are. But also they're not sure. I mean, six floors going up is scaring some people. Sometimes it is appropriate, sometimes it's not. But no parking in some cases. So things like that that are happening already is upsetting. And so they're asking for not so much deciding on something this week, but giving everybody more time, more respect, more real engagement. And in Dorchester, what I learned is you do that and you don't have fights. You just don't have fights. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jean. We also wanted to bring up Matt Waller, who is the current board president of Walk Up Rosendale, who also used to be the board president of the Southwest Boston CDC, and helped us build that organization. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, I don't hold that against me. So Matt Waller from Walk Up Rosendale. So we wanted to just come here and express our support, generally speaking, for squares and streets, and not so much speak to the Hyde Park Cleary Square. So we understand the concern of this community about what squares and streets can be for Cleary Square. But for us in Rosendale, for Walk Up Rosendale in particular, we're an organization that is very much in favor of meeting the housing crisis with all the tools we have. And so we view squares and streets, the tools of squares and streets, the initial set of zones that are to be adopted by the zoning commission, as critical to get going on a very important part of the bigger strategy. So we're very much in support of squares and streets. We think the time is now, and we think it would be a mistake for the city as a general matter to delay extensively moving forward with the zones and the zoning commission. And again, these are zones that are not yet mapped. So these are zones that will be available to be mapped through a process that we're going to have in Rosendale Square that we understand is something like 6 to 9 months, although who knows how it goes. It may go a little longer. We'll find out. We're looking forward to that process in Rosendale Square. I happen to live a couple blocks from Rosendale Square. I will not say how long. But I will say that it's very important to understand that piece of it. These are zones to be mapped through a planning process, not to be dropped on you today or next month or even in 2 months. It's going to be a whole process. Everyone should be included. And we in our letter of support for Squares and Streets suggested that meetings like this are nice and they're important. But we also think that public involvement should be breaking up of community meetings like this and meeting people in different contexts. So we really encourage the city to think creatively about how they want to do public involvement in Squares and Streets, and generally speaking on all of the public involvement processes the city has. So I will stop there. We're in support. We think it's important to have the community process around the mapping and planning for areas when they're done. But again, what the zoning commission is doing soon is adopting zones that are not yet mapped anywhere in the city. They're to be mapped through process. Thank you.
I next wanted to bring up Lori Radlin, who is the chair of the Rosendale Coalition.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Wu. Thank you, Chief Jemison, for being here. Just by way of introduction, the Rosendale Coalition started about 2 years ago with nearly 50 members. and around half of our members are legacy, Latinx, Black, and immigrant business owners in the core commercial district of Rosendale Square. So my comments, and I'll make it brief, relate to the health of small businesses and the questions we posed about displacement and safeguards to prevent it. My 3 points. First, displacement discussion and raising buildings are already here. So we lost one of our coalition members, Latinx owner, to a new development. We're going to lose a beloved immigrant legacy owner by the end of the year. And I visit my coalition, our coalition members who own businesses, and several owners, despite visits from their landlords in the past few days. Their buildings are going up. The building may be raised. There's no known plan to rehouse the businesses. Protections against displacement cannot come too quickly, and we ask that strategies be put in place before new zoning is put before the BPDA board. Second. There's can you hear me?
No.
Second. Okay, here I go. I used to lecture pathophysiology to a classroom of 600, so we'll give it a go. Oh, I don't have to do that. I did. I taught people. Anyway, second, one assertion is that new larger buildings will bring new customers to our current businesses. And in order to cover their building costs and deliver to their investors, the builders who develop new buildings will need to raise rents. Raising rents in Rosendale Square is not good for our current business owners. The new renters and new developments are going to need to afford that rent. And you have to ask, are these new tenants going to be the customers of our Dominican Republic barbershops, our Caribbean owners grading shop, the shop that an immigrant holds where he sells goods from their home country? The fear is the loss of these businesses. Gentrification. Okay, third and last, displacement strategies could be costly in terms of moving and housing a commercial tenant when their building is raised. A raising strategy is not environmentally friendly, and using what we can of existing buildings is. Rather than raising buildings, can you please revisit our Article 67 to anticipate the density and new housing we need? We can add densities and describe by creating 2 and 3 stories of housing above our current buildings. What we need to know in terms of that strategy is what is the goal for the number of buildings and units that we want in Rosendale Square. We really are asking you about the goal of a number. Keeping older buildings is essential to the well-being of cities. If you've read Jane Jacobs, you know that she says it's essential to a neighborhood's character and their livability. A research study based on her principles found, quote, a focus on density alone eludes the important role that older, smaller buildings play in supporting small businesses and functional, diverse neighborhoods. Planning tools and programs that support the continued use and adaptive reuse of existing older, smaller buildings constitute compelling options for managing growth while retaining the neighborhood character. The retention of older buildings also allows for more stabilization of our current businesses. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much. Victoria, I want to introduce the next person from the Hyde Park Neighborhood Association. I just want to say our mayor will be leaving at about 8:15. So we really want to make sure that we get everybody's questions in, right? So please, when we call you up here, we definitely want everybody to try to keep it as concise as possible. So I'm going to call Jackie Jones, member of the APNA.
Putting out the mic works.
No, they changed the mic. They changed the mic.
Yeah, but
It's good. It's good. Yeah.
Fantastic. Jackie Jones.
Hello, welcome. My name is Jacqueline Jones. My name is Jacqueline Jones, and I'm just a community member. I've lived in this neighborhood since 2010. And one of the things I like about it is that the community is so close. There are people who have lived here for many years. The kids have grown up here. Grandparents are still in this community. What I would appreciate is, as we're looking to make change is that we keep in mind that the zoning code asks that we protect Boston's distinct neighborhoods from the development of buildings or uses that do not harmonize with their surrounding context. That we keep in mind that we want to promote the health, safety, convenience, morals, and welfare of inhabitants of the city, to encourage the most appropriate use of laws throughout the city. Please keep that in mind as we're trying to make change. The Cleary Square neighborhood has a lot of light at the moment. And as we're looking to make change and to go upward, what we're going to do is get rid of the light that naturally comes into the community. Also, the local vendors that are in the community, we need to ask them what they're looking for, what they want, what they need to upgrade their business. We don't just want to impose something on them. They've been here for years, and they really do care about being here and wanting to be here. And so I ask that you please give the community an opportunity to really understand what you're trying to do, what you're looking to accomplish, so that we get what we need. And also, support what you're proposing. Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to bring up Jose Master, who is going to introduce Mayor Wu, and then turn it over to Mayor Wu and Chief Jemison.
I'm going to try to stand near this owl so that the Zoom people can hear me and not use the microphone. In the corner, can you hear me? Great. Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see so many people here. It's really nice that you take time from your busy schedule to join us for this very important occasion. Before I introduce the mayor, indulge me just for 2 minutes. I'd like to see who's in the room. How many of you are from West Roxbury? Please raise your hands. Thank you. Rosendale. Jamaica Plain. Dorchester. Roxbury. Mattapan. South Bend. Brighton. Austin. Back Bay. Fenway. East Boston. Charlestown. South Boston. What am I missing? Hyde Park. How many are from Hyde Park? How many of you in Hyde Park are homeowners? Raise your hand. How many of you have owned your home for more than 50 years? Raise your hand. How many have owned your homes in Hyde Park for more than 40 to 50 years? Close. 40 to 50. Yep. How many have owned it 30 to 40? 20 to 30. 10 to 20. Under 10 years. How many of you work in service industry? How many of you are business owners? How many of you own restaurants? Barbershops? Beauty salons? Groceries? Real estate companies? How many of you own liquor stores? How many of you own any type of retail store? How many of you consider yourself professional? How many of you all work in construction? Labor? How many of you are in gig economies? How many of you are plumbers? Electricians? How many of you are educators? Higher ed? High school? Middle school? Preschool? How many of you are church leaders? How many of you are retired? How many of you work more than one job? How many of you are, like me, elders? How many of you are younger than 20 years old? Yeah. How many of you are 20 to 30 years old? 30 to 40? 40 to 50? 70, 70 to 80, 80 to 90, 90 to 100. How many of you work with young people? How many of you work in media? How many of you are in entertainment, arts, culture, music? How many of you are elected officials? Elected officials, please stand up. Quickly say who you are, quick.
Councilor at Large Julia Mejia.
Who else?
District 6 City Councilor Ben Weber.
Who else?
District 8 City Councilor Sharon Durkin.
Who else?
District 5 City Councilor Enrique Pepper.
Who else? How many of you are public servants who work for the city? How many of you work for the state? How many of you work for federal government? How many of you work in philanthropy? How many of you work for social service agencies? How many of you care for the elderly? How many of you provide home health care? Now we know who's in the room. This is something big round applause. But we also know who's not in the room. We also know who's overrepresented and who's underrepresented in this moment. And it's important for us to know that, because when we gather as a community, we have to understand that our voices don't represent everyone. And thus we have to be respectful that our voice is our voice, that we have agency as individuals, as citizens, to share our voice. And so that when we speak, regardless if we lead associations or organizations, we have to understand we are only one part of the wheel.
You are diminishing us.
No, I'm not.
Exactly.
No, I'm not.
Yes, thank you.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. What I'm saying is that each one of us has a voice. All of us have a voice. But that we have to understand that when we gather here, we're representing a sector of the voices. And thus we have to understand that at the end of the day, it's the bigger community at large that we want to make sure that we connect with. And we have to therefore be the ambassadors. We have to be the connectors. We have to be those that widen our concentric circle so that that voice is everyone and inclusive. That's what I'm saying. And it's saying that when we have 21st century challenges, when we have 21st century moments, we need 21st century solutions.
And that's why we need 6 more months to plan.
And that's one of the reasons in introducing the mayor, I say to you, I've known the mayor now for 12 years. She helped recruit me to work on the Elizabeth Warren campaign. It's hard to lead a city when we've been used to status quo for years and years and years. And to affect change, transformative change, that type of leadership is not easy. It takes risk. But at the same time, if you're the type of leader who has a vision, who understands emotional intelligence, and emotional intelligence, my friend, is the ability for all of us to have empathy for each other and to listen. And at the same time, understand what it is that we're all trying to share so that we get to consensus. Emotional intelligence is also the ability to have social awareness and self-awareness. It's the ability to have a vision and to understand how to marshal our assets and resources so that we can come up with a plan and execute what the vision will look like at the end. It means having leadership that allows all voices to be included and have the right people around you to lead that plan, so it's executed. This evening is an example of leadership amongst all of us and amongst the Honorable Mayor, Michelle. Leadership is about taking risks, challenging the status quo, having a vision and a plan, having the assets and marshaling the resources, and making sure that you're flexible so that you can move along in consensus create that plan that reduces that vision. I share that with you as an introduction to the Honorable Mayor and to Chief Jemison, because it's important for all of us at this moment to assume that role of emotional leadership. I know we can. I want to sleep tonight very well, knowing that everyone here is part of this process to make that vision, not just for us. I'm going to be 74 years old. It's for my children's children. That's what I'm thinking about. And I know many of you, including my friend over there, who's 99 years young. She's here today not because of her. I bet she's here because of her children's children's children. And they're someone who has taken the mantle to think about her children's children is the Honorable Mayor, Michelle Wu. Please welcome.
Hi, everyone. Okay, I'm gonna try to find a spot where this will actually work. It's better?
Yes.
Sound-wise, it's okay? Okay, I don't have the main melodious voice of our inductee into the Arts Hall of Fame, Jose Masso. That's okay? Okay. All right, one mic at a time. I want to thank you all. I want to thank you for coming. I want to thank everyone for mobilizing. This is the best part of the job, is being able to see how much our community members care about your part of Boston and about how Boston as a whole fits together. And so I'm going to try to keep my remarks here as short as possible so we can get to Q&A. I had put 8:15 as a time that I need to leave by to be able to put my kids to bed, but it is seeming like we're not going to get to make it in time to engage properly before then. So I'm going to be flexible with my time to try to be here for as many of the questions that I can. I can't go until midnight, y'all, but we will try to move fast through. And thank you so much to the team. I'm here with Chief Jemison, someone who we are so lucky agreed to come back to Boston and take on this role in a really transformative moment for all of our city. And we have many members of our team, as you saw, raise their hands earlier, who are supporting this effort and supporting us tonight. And I also want to thank the fellow electeds who got shouted out and introduced themselves earlier as well. Thank you for traveling, some of you all from all across the city and other parts, to be here in community. Really, this is very, I mean, you could look, even some of our, serving at large before Councilor Mejia, how rare is it that we get to see this collection of neighborhoods in a space, in person together? This is really special, and I want to thank you all for putting it together. So I want to save the space for the chief to really get into the nitty-gritty of squares and streets and where that's headed and all of the details, and of course Q&A. I want to start just by ensuring you all, as Jose said, understand the vision of why we are even trying to put this forward and what we are hoping to get out of the process of building new muscle for all of us to engage on planning and development and zoning in this way differently than we have ever before, and why we need some of the changes that we're talking about, that we're hoping can come out of this process as it's applied neighborhood to neighborhood. Many of all of you have seen me over many years talking about planning and zoning, and when I get asked, what is the most important thing that nobody's talking about in the big picture conversation, I always say the zoning code. Ask any resident in the neighborhood, or actually take all of yourselves out of it. Ask any other resident who's just walking around in the grocery store, what do you know of the zoning code? And you'll get kind of a shrug. Boston zoning code is not only incredibly complex, as you all know, it is different from that of nearly every other major city. If you think about the complexity as sort of, you can kind of count it by the number of pages long it is, most major cities are in the range of something like 700 to 900 pages in their zoning code. Even cities like New York City, for example, 1,000, et cetera, et cetera. Boston is nearing 4,000 pages in our zoning code. And that is, it's not, I'm not saying that as a bad thing, I'm just saying it's a very complex document that reflects our history and how particularly we treat each and every individual usage and each and every individual part of the city. Given how complex it is, the last time that it was comprehensively updated across the entire code was in 1965. So we are far from being collectively modernized when it comes to what this document is. And what is the point? You know, most, you don't go through your day hearing about the zoning code, but in fact, so many of the issues that we do talk about all the time, how crazy expensive housing is, how hard it is to get around Boston because of traffic and the transportation issues that are connected to new developments, whether or not you have access to a park within walking distance of your home or one that, or adequate green space, how clean our air is, how safe we are from flooding and heat and all of the impacts of climate change, whether our schools are in the right locations relative to where we anticipate students living now and or population growth in the future, and I'm put a pin in, we're going to talk more in a different venue, but I hear you on that. All of this comes down to whether the rules for how we grow as a city actually make sense for what we need now and into the future. And what Boston has basically done over the last 60, 70 years is to evolve sort of, you know, not intentionally even, but one step after another, into a space where there basically are no real rules. 90% plus of projects, new developments, and buildings that get built happen outside of what the zoning code says are the limits. Even the buildings that exist today, walk down a street of triple deckers, and most of the time, those buildings are all illegal according to the zoning code, even though that's how we think about our kind of typical form in Boston. And so we are all used to a system that is stressful, unpredictable, but is our system right now, which is to get something done, you have to talk about that individual parcel of land or building, go and have as many community meetings as you can until people either give up and stop fighting it, or get overruled, or come to consensus, but then you can still take the approvals, flip it, and then start over with the new owner in all through the process all over again because the zoning code isn't really rules. And so for all of that, my fundamental belief is that if we want to be a city with enough housing that people can afford to raise a family, if we want to be a city where we can actually trust and rely on our transportation system and connect all the places that people need to go in their daily lives, if we want to be a coastal city where forget our grandkids, where our kids are safe growing up in the next couple of decades, we have to get serious about defining what the rules are for affordability, for open space, for climate resiliency, and for equity. And so that is a tall order to get from where we've been over the course of several decades to where we need to be. And we are not going to get there overnight. I know everything feels very fast, and like there's a lot of changes that are even being discussed in bite-sized chunks as we go. In addition to needing to change the zoning code, I want to talk just for a second on the structure of the BPDA and how our government is organized to be able to even make decisions with community about how to change the zoning code. Earlier today, we filed an ordinance with the City Council that will get introduced at this week's meeting that will be the second half of the legal changes needed for what we're proposing to make development and planning be able to facilitate the changes we need on the zoning side. For 70 years now, Boston has had a redevelopment authority that has been making decisions based on a definition of development's primary purpose as being eradicating, quote unquote, urban blight and decay. This is what led to the West End, that story that we all know very well in Boston and that other cities around the world tell of what urban renewal means. And this is what we've seen in Roxbury, in the South End, in Charlestown, in many parts of our city. Urban renewal was a tool from a different era where they were trying to solve a different set of challenges, and we can have a whole debate about whether they even successfully addressed any of those challenges. But today, Where can we find urban blight or decay in the city of Boston? Those were code words that were used even in the moment to eradicate poor working class immigrant communities from our city. And so today, what we are doing is ensuring that the focus on equity, resiliency, and affordability is what's going to guide development and to guide our planning and growth. Our big picture vision is for the structures of our government, the culture of our agencies, and the accountability mechanisms that are in place according to all of the laws and practices to follow through on having a vision of growth where community is helping us get to that point of equity, resiliency, and affordability. Think of our, this is why we pursued a home rule petition up at the State House to eliminate and end urban renewal formally. That is up at the State House. The City Council voted it through. I testified on that earlier last week up on Beacon Hill. And then also now with our City Council ordinance to codify as a staff transition where the NBRA, now BPDA staff, will shift to the City of Boston. Sometime in the formulation of how we got to where we are, cities around the country created redevelopment authorities. Many of them started urban renewal projects, including Boston. The federal government funded 95% of the reimbursement costs to raise entire neighborhoods, and then cities could build new buildings there, and that's what many cities did. But whereas those other cities moved away from that model, got rid of their redevelopment authorities or changed the structure, Boston actually doubled down on that and ended up putting our planning board into that structure, collapsing all of our entities in there, and then in the 80s, took that entire agency and moved it off the books of city governments, was self-financing and an isolated entity on its own. Some would say that would allow it to be isolated from political decisions, right? They do their thing, they don't care who the mayor is, they're trying to just build the city. Others would say, in lived experience and in different evidence and examples in our community, that allowed them to make decisions separate from the larger welfare that every other city department has to take into account, and totally separate from any oversight mechanism on their budget through the city council and the administration. And so this is a major change that is not only a structural one, that agency back into the city for the first time in decades, but also to work with the talented staff there to ensure that they have the protections they need for their compensation and employment benefits, for that transition to be smooth, because while we're talking about boxes on an org chart, this is people's real lives who have chosen to serve the public, and we want to make sure that everyone is held whole in that conversation. So there's a lot happening outside of squares and streets that I just wanted to lay the foundation for. Within squares and streets, one thing that I will say before handing it over to Chief Jemison is that I do not believe that the former process of doing neighborhood plans was working well for the city. And this is not to do the same thing, but on a much accelerated timeline, but to do it entirely different altogether. What we saw is that when our administration started, there were 4 neighborhood plans that had already been ongoing for 3-4 years each. The downtown plan, the Charlestown plan, Mattapan, and East Boston. To different degrees, some of those plans were moving along grounded in community. Some of them were moving along and triggered initially because there were some large-scale developments already proposed for the area, and it was hard to have a conversation about the neighborhood without specifically talking about proposals that are in the pipeline already. We have to escape this dynamic of planning being a code word for trying to find an excuse for developers to do what they're going to do anyway in the city. And to do so, we need to separate our planning function from our development review function. When I started, the planners who were hired as planners in the agency, half of their time was being spent on development review because the needs were so great, the staffing was so challenged, and so even when they were there to do planning, they would get pulled into the more urgent questions of when can I get an approval, when can I get an approval, and it just skewed the planning efforts and what was able to be moved forward and codified with community. To do this right, it needs a level of staffing to accommodate planning like we haven't seen in a long time, and it needs a separation so you know that when we are having planning discussions, it is not to accommodate the developers who actually have proposals already that they're trying to move forward. It is to think about our kids and grandkids in that 50 and 100-year time frame. What do we want our communities to look like? What needs do we have today that we still are looking to have addressed? And how do we set the rules so that they're actually rules? Squares and Streets is not something that we are going to be jamming through in the next week. I will say just right off the bat, because I think my job is to deliver hard news as it is to be able to, how do I say this? I want you all to feel like I will tell you the truth, whether you're going to like it or not in every situation, and that I will listen to the truth that you are telling me to incorporate it into everything that we are doing as well. I can just say right now, I do not think the city can move forward in a time frame that makes sense to give a 6-month extension on the comment period for this first phase. And let me explain why. The perception, I think some of the worry out there is that once this window closes for the forms to be put into the zoning code, that there will be no more chance to ever talk about them again, or no more chance for neighborhoods to actually be able to talk about what they want to see in their neighborhoods. That is not what we're doing with this very, very first pre-step to Squares and Streets. Our zoning code today is organized around heights and FARs and different calculations that we are actually trying to change the language of altogether. We are moving towards what's called form-based zoning, which is less about how many units you can put in and more about what shapes fit a neighborhood's character. And so whether something is 6 units straight up and down feels very different than if it's basically two triple deckers sort of within one building, even though it's the same 6 units. And so to really respect the design, the character, the identity of each neighborhood, we are looking to incorporate form-based zoning, which itself is a change that is not in the language of our zoning code today. So the first step to even be able to talk about each neighborhood is to put the building blocks of this new language on the table in the zoning code. These are not going to be wholesale copied and pasted and dropped into any neighborhood, and each neighborhood isn't just pick one of these options and that's it, either be 6 stories tall or be 2 stories tall. That's not how it's going to go. These are merely building blocks so that even block by block, street by street, the conversation in each neighborhood when we launch the Squares and Streets planning process is, actually, I like that building block, this kind of shape for this block in the neighborhood. I like that shape for the street that's behind it, that's a little bit, between the commercial area and the residential areas. It should feel like the shapes are going like this. So that is what we're trying to do with the first phase. It is not about applying that to any neighborhood, and it is not about closing the door on discussions for things that are really important in each neighborhood. The real meat of this gets to the Squares and Streets planning process, neighborhood by neighborhood. And that's where there will be a period of at least 6 months, each with different topics laid out, organized, notes available, and not just those meetings that happen monthly, getting to the who's not in the room question, but lots of engagement that everyone is going to be very overwhelmed by in terms of how we're creating different spaces for people to connect and engage, and we will need your help with that. So that was the longer than I wanted context setting, and I'll turn it over to Arthur.
Good evening, Art, and of course every other neighborhood, and say thank you for an introduction. First, I want to say, introduce myself. I'm Arthur Jemison. I'm the Chief of Planning and the BPDA Director. Thank you for inviting us to your meeting tonight. I'm thrilled to be here. I think actually the mayor explained just about all the aspects of the planning process that are material today. I think what we're actually going to do will come to a dialogue with you and questions and answers. I do want to just underline a couple of things that were shared. So the specific action that, again, you're hearing a lot about is adding new items to the zoning code adding a series of new forms to the zoning code. That's what's in the currently advertised amendment. When those things are added to the code, the zoning for Cleary Square or any other square is going to be the same. It's going to be added to the code, and we're going to have a 6 to 9 month planning process with you, through which we'll decide, just like the mayor said, on which block should we have which kind of zoning. That's a 6 month process, not unlike the one that was described earlier as what the community wanted to have in order to make those kinds of choices. And at the end of that process, people, if everyone feels the same way, we'll make decisions together about what zoning to recommend to the zoning commission and to the BPDA board. So I want to make it very clear that the actual decision-making process has not started, and it's going to start with you through a 6 to 9 month planning process. I know there's been a lot of concern and worry that something's going to get approved that's going to go into immediate effect, and you won't have a chance to do the planning process. I want to say for the 3rd or 4th time that that's not what's proposed here, and it's not what we're going to do. But with that, I could sort of get into lots of parts of the case for doing it, reasons for doing it. I think the mayor's done a great job of laying them out. What might be better, since it's almost 8:10 already, would be for us to have a question and answer process through which the mayor and I can answer the questions you might have. That's why you all came out. So what I'd rather do is get right to that. Oh, sure. So right now, currently planning to do squares and streets in 2 pilot neighborhoods. Cleary Square is one of them, and Rosendale Square is the other. There are a number of other places in the city that are eligible for squares and streets to happen later. I can talk about each one of them. Just mention them so everybody knows what they are. For a list, great. Alston Village, right in center. We're already in Cleary Square, so that part's already been done. Cobbin Square, Eggleston, Fields Corner, Forest Hills, Four Corners, Grove Hall, Hyde Park Avenue, JP Center, Mattapan Square, Mission Hill, along Tremont Street, Packard's Corner, Rosendale Square, Upham's Corner, and West Roxbury Center. Those are the other places that are eligible to be selected for squares and streets. These 2 initial squares, these seem like appropriate places for growth in the city. You have transit, you've got great opportunities for a little more density in a couple of places. And I think you've got, based on this turnout, a neighborhood that's engaged and excited about having the dialogue that's required to come up with a plan that could eventually become zoning. So, Mayor, does that speak to your point?
I just wanted to just make clear through that squares and streets is not something that every single neighborhood is going to necessarily experience, because there are many parts of the city that were already touched now, either by some of these neighborhood-wide plans that were recently codified, or again, the focus is on areas that are somewhat transit accessible and have a commercial corridor. So I think we were hearing anxiety about, Charlestown, for example. Are we going to redo, some of the things that we just went through after we finished our neighborhood plan, or East Boston? And the answer is parts of the city that already have gone through that. We're not about to reopen things that we just did. And so this seems like a list of neighborhoods that we could potentially get to within the next 2 years.
Excellent. So what I'd like to do next is take hands and just kind of try to answer as many questions as we can in a row. I'll start to go from this side, and then we'll head over to this side. Ma'am?
Hi, good evening. My name is Nalan. Good evening. My name is Nalan Bryce. Good evening. My name is Nalan Bryce. I'm part of the Hyde Park Association, and my question is, with all this redistricting, I have two-part question. I want to make sure that dispensaries is not part of this square zoning thing that we want to do. And also, Hyde Park is starting to be very cluttered because parking situation, you've changed parking on certain streets. We have people who can't get into their homes due to certain things that were built in this area, as well as the issue with getting to the city. You said that you don't, this meeting is not a finalized meeting or whatever, but when you guys created these bike lanes, it was made finalized, it was supposed to be temporary, and then it became finalized, and then the city became so clustered that you can't get to anywhere because of certain bike lanes in certain areas. So now when you started to put buildings in corners such as where the Hyde Park station is here, I heard that we wanted to build like a cafe or something and homes on top, but that area is already cluttered without the cafe. So my question to you is, when you do these areas and you're going to build these buildings, are you going to consider the parking issues, the cluster, the actual driving of the areas and stuff? And schools, I mean, you put a school down the street and it's caused a cluster. There's problems getting in and out of Hyde Park because of certain schools that were built. So that's my question.
So, thank you for the question. By way of example, there will definitely, during the small area plans, be work done on transportation and use of streets. And there'll absolutely be a process through which we get community input about what height buildings should be and whether or not it should have first floor commercial and making sure that they have adequate parking for the first floor. That's going to be part of the dialogue we're going to be having for 6 to 9 months. In choosing the right zoning for this neighborhood.
And I'll just add, is that for me, clutter, I completely agree that clutter is bad, right? I go home, the kids' room's gonna be cluttered, it's just stressful, and for me, clutter means when things have been sort of accumulated without a plan relative to each other, and that is exactly the result of the system that we have today, where each project kind of fights through, and if they can get past, they build this, then the next one next to it has nothing to do with whether it caused more traffic or actually could get connected to transportation. One thing that Chief Jemison has already done under his leadership that's paved the way for this planning shift to the city is to create a centralized planning advisory council of all the city cabinets that touch on planning. That's the BPDA, that's transportation, housing, environment, small business, arts, the equity cabinet, which includes a disability commission. All of those conversations should be happening together, and that's another part of the reason why we are moving planning over, so they can all be coordinated among the different functions, so that transportation is not separate from what the decision on the buildings are. So that's, in fact, exactly what we're trying to do, is to ask residents what would feel organized to be able to accommodate housing and affordability that you want to see for people who want to live in the neighborhood, but also in a way that is codified once and for all, rather than one-off here and there contributing to the clutter. On the bike lanes point, I hear you loud and clear that these decisions have been happening separately from some of the other development ones. And again, that's the reason why we're trying to bring everyone all into the same space, talk about it, make sure that we're connecting different points in the city rather than just looking one neighborhood at a time, because what happens down the street with the school decision ends up impacting development and planning. On traffic in particular, I will just add one teeny tiny thing that's actually separate from this meeting, is that we are trying to understand, a lot of times it ends up that the traffic signals and how they're organized can cause just as much, traffic signals and how the curb is managed can cause just as much traffic as anything else. When the curb is blocked up or used for a different thing and delivery trucks are then taking up lanes, or when the signals are, the street lights are not letting cars go through straight on the main road for long enough and they're having to stop too often for the side streets or this and that, that can cause traffic more than some of these development decisions and other things. We want to coordinate all of that. And there's actually a particular effort on looking at all of the signals and where traffic's accumulating at different times of day, including during school times, to ease some of that as we're talking about this. But that can all be in the same conversation when we get to the neighborhood by neighborhood issues. It's bring all of that into this, not just to talk about buildings.
Go this way and then back. Ma'am? That's you. That's you.
Yeah, my name's Cheryl Pavlik. I'm from Brighton. And you mentioned that there's going to be community involvement when any particular, well, never mind this, particular place is being rezoned. How are these community members chosen? Do you have a plan? Are you going to be working with local civic organizations?
So we're going to be, we have, so let's get started. So we have very comprehensive lists of Hyde Park residents who participated in zoning and IAGs. Every one of the processes where we're doing outreach, maintain a very strong database. Also going to be taking names, and we took names at our last event, we're taking them tonight. We'll make sure that there's a very widely broadcast netcast to make sure as many people as possible can attend. I know there's been a dialogue. One of the things that neighbors asked was whether there would be a sort of select group who would be selected to be part of it. I think what we'd like to do, especially at the outset, is have as many people as possible attend the workshops. I think we're expecting to have sort of 6 to 9 meetings, possibly one a month, where there'll be a situation like this, or there'll be tables and planners that we can actually solicit. We can actually solicit your advice in sort of smaller format that's traditionally used for planning these days. So hopefully that gives you a sense of how we'll be running the meetings. But we're planning to start those meetings at approximately March of this year.
I'm sorry, that's two questions from the audience, two from Zoom.
Next question is from Chandra Smart. What happens to author's position, purview / oversight of prior projects?
I don't know. I'm being funny. So if I understand the question, it's like with the changes made in the way that the organization works. Mayor, you can probably do this as well as I can, but I'll say I'm currently a staff person with the city of Boston. I work in that, I technically work in the mayor's office. And so with the change, about 75, 85% of the people who work at the BPDA are going to be moved over to work in a new city department of planning. So they'll be my team. I'm very blessed to have them and work with them. So I don't think anything's changing unless this meeting doesn't go well.
Next question is from, and it reads, my question is how the Squares and Streets Initiative is going to affirmatively further fair housing.
Sure. So for those who don't know, affirmatively furthering fair housing is a policy that was passed, I think, in the late 2000 teens, which is designed to make sure that we are affirmatively furthering fair housing in all the development work that we do. So by way of example, project is proposed that there has to be an analysis done to identify whether it could have any displacing effect, and if so, a series of measures have to be proposed in order to deal with that effect. So I am confident that in our process of doing this planning, we're going to be interacting closely with the Office of Fair Housing to make sure that the recommendations of the plan reflect appropriately fair housing policies and procedures.
I just wanted to make a comment on the displacement and gentrification points that were raised earlier as well. What we have observed is that, well, first, how many folks have been approached by an offer to buy your home with all cash by a developer who's going to push you out, right? And when the rules are not real rules, the value and the profits go to developers who can try to find the opportunities where they get someone to sell them a property, and they know someone or they've figured out the system, they're going to get a special approval and make that building bigger, and then they make the money that way. What we are trying to do, whether it's with our ADUs, which are designed to allow for you to build an in-home unit that you can work with the city to have funding to build yourself so that you and your family stay there and accrue that value and that wealth. What we're trying to do is change the zoning code so that then the value and the wealth goes to the existing residents and homeowners. If you already live there, or if you are a business that is able to currently own your place, when the zoning changes happen through a process that you are aware of, then the rules are the rules, and no one can come and say, I'm gonna buy you out because I know that I can get a sweetheart deal and build higher and make more of that profit back. It is for resident, there are some people who are going to choose to sell, as property values has been going up for a long time in the city of Boston, and we have seen some residents make decisions for the future nest egg for their next generations that they are going to sell their home, have a move somewhere else, and that is their decision to make decisions about the wealth that their home has earned them through that equity over many years. But we want each property owner and Boston homeowner to be able to make those decisions for themselves, and each building owner of the current existing businesses to make those decisions for themselves, rather than have a system where it's all from outside folks coming in trying to seize and create value that's not accruing to local residents. So the hope is that if we do this right, which is with community, which is with anti-displacement strategies, which is with resources to be able to help support local residents and property owners in benefiting from any of the changes that might be there, that in fact strengthens wealth building in our communities rather than the current push that displacement and gentrification has a clear path.
Yes, hi. My name is Markeisha, and I'm usually very loud. So my name is Markeisha, and I live in Dorchester, close to Fields Corner, which is another spot that we're having Squares and Street. Even tonight, I struggle to understand exactly what that means, and I would like to understand how is this going to be different than other developments coming in and displacing folks? I know I'm hearing a lot about homeowners. I'm a renter, and most of the folks that I know are renters, and we are the ones that get affected by higher rents and having to leave. So I would like to hear the plan behind. It's nice to know that people are going to come and we can get to help decide what the buildings look like and what businesses should be there, but do we get to decide, the people who get to stay there and enjoy those buildings and businesses, and having a better communication with folks and a better, things move very fast in the city of Boston, and by the time that we know they're happening, it's already happening to us, and we don't have a lot of say-so. And I just want to respond to when he was saying about a leader and taking risks. To take risks, you have if people are taking risks with you, you need to get their opinions and see how they feel and the way that they want to take risks. You don't get to decide the risks that you take people who are going to be the ones affected by it. It's not okay, it's not fair, we're not chess pieces. We are human beings who are just trying to live, and most of us live in a state of worry and stress every day, and we still do the things that we need to do to survive daily. I don't have a secure sense of security where I live in the city of Boston. I don't own my own home for reasons, not my fault. I'm very smart. And if I had the resources and people to help me, I would own up blocks of stuff. But I don't, because I don't have those choices. So I just want to know what the plan is behind the pretty blocks and all that to keep people where they're going to be in their neighborhoods.
So thanks for that question. I also want to say I recognize your voice for many engagement calls about the new IDP policy that was passed recently. It's 20% affordable and in any new development starting later this year. So I know you were active in getting that in getting that advocated for and passed. I want to say thank you, or opportunity to say thank you to say for doing that. Anti-displacement is a very important part of the planning we're going to do, and so what you can expect to happen during the 6 month to 9 month process is a series of actions coordinated among other departments. So for the first time, through our PAC and with our planning director, Amy Chambers, we have people coming together into different departments to say, what are the different tools and tactics we take to prevent displacement? I'll give a few examples. So currently, MOH has a preservation team that identifies, MOH means Mayor's Office of Housing, pardon me, that identifies buildings in the city where there may be expiring affordability. We have to make sure that affordability is extended and where appropriate, deepened and extended. And also if those buildings are have obsolescence and those buildings are rehabilitated. That's the kind of work we are going to be doing as part of the small area plan, so that when there is new zoning, you can be assured that any building that may be at risk of acquisition and being turned into a market building, that action's prevented through the act of preserving the existing affordable housing. So that's an example of something that the Mayor's Office of Housing does. It will probably be things that the planning department will do, as well as the other parts of the system. Our friends in the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture are also very focused on making sure that we're preventing the displacement of arts facilities and other kinds of commercial space. My colleague Shagun, Chief of Bill, was very focused on making sure that our legacy businesses are preserved and have the space grants and other things that they need to stay in the places that make our neighborhoods distinct. So those are a few ways we'll be fighting displacement during the planning process.
So just going back to Ms. Marquisha's first question of like, okay, still, what does squares and streets actually look like, and what is it going to mean when we go through the process? It might, if it's willing, come up our Amy, who is going to be leading the process in the planning division of the agency, just to walk through, like, for example, step one, when your neighborhood is kicked off, in this case, it would be Cleary Square and Rosendale first, there will be an email blast to anyone who's on any of our emails saying, here's the first meeting, there will be flyers going, and then what can people expect, and what are the kind of opportunities to come in, how frequent, and et cetera.
But the meeting means nothing if you don't listen to us.
So good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Amy Chambers. I'm the Director of Planning for BPDA. With regard to the Mayor's question, our staff have put together a template, essentially, that will be posted on our, is it posted on our website already? You see the engagement template? Okay, that is on our website. That is an engagement template which is intended to set expectations around what you can expect from us as we go through each plan area. That engagement template speaks to different sorts of activities like neighborhood walks, like community meetings, like office hours, etc., that the staff will do neighborhood to neighborhood. One of the kind of criticisms, rightfully, that we have dealt with in some of our past planning efforts have been that in different neighborhoods, we delivered different activities when it came to engagement. So we wanted to make sure that we were communicating, I'm sorry about the microphone, but that we're communicating a little bit more clearly and effectively around the types of engagement activities that we would do. That being said, we are looking for space in every neighborhood that we'll be working in, so that our planners are actually embedded in the neighborhoods themselves. We recognize that we're talking about a much shorter period of time than we have done through our planning exercises at the neighborhood scale. And so to that end, we want to make sure that our planners are in the neighborhood and really accessible to residents at different times of day, instead of only being accessible in the context of public meetings. Everything that we produce will be put on our website. So we'll have paper available in the office space that we're actually occupying, but we'll also make sure that comments, like the comments that we received from the zoning, meeting minutes, any presentations, etc., will be available online as well.
Yeah, I'm sorry to take a turn again, I really am, but let me tell you how business owners in the coalition learn about everything. I hand leaflet door to door. I hand leaflet door to door often. It's the, even though it's on the website and they've gotten an email, they're not even reading my emails. That's why I have to wait. I just want to say one more thing. The other thing is, Rosendale is a tough place to reach consensus on. And people have stood up and spoken out and won't do it again. Let me just end that. So I don't know how you're gonna reach consensus when people differ so seriously. And the other thing is, how are you gonna reach hard to reach people like my owners without, and making it safe for them to speak up? And how are you gonna know that you've reached hard to reach people? Do you have a proportion? You know, having my name on this list shouldn't mean I'm the one who comes to the meeting. So I think it's hard to reach consensus, and I'm going to ask how you do that. And I'll just add one more thing, Dr. Wu, our owners don't own their buildings. I know one owner who owns a building. So just in terms of in this place, and they applied for space grants and didn't get it.
So we got, gonna try to answer that question briefly. I guess I'm gathering we've got time for a couple more questions, which we'll do after that. Want to go quickly and answer?
Yeah, I think that one of the most important parts that I can kind of reiterate is that having the planners working in the neighborhoods is going to make a huge difference in terms of the types of communications that you're talking about, Lori. Some of the things that the staff have tasked themselves with doing include going door to door to the storefronts specifically within Rosendale Square, but certainly in some of the other squares. It's going to be really imperative that the team get to know all of the folks who are in those different businesses. And I think, you know, both because we think that that is important and because we've heard feedback from folks like you, for example, we know that those are the types of things that definitely need to get done. So I think one of the things that I can say for certain that you should expect from our team is that this is a much more like personable process, and that is a process that really does focus taking the time to do those types of one-on-one efforts. And I think in doing that, to your point about the website, I know that's not always the form of information that people kind of absorb the most. Having folks actually in the neighborhood, having folks be able to walk over to a store, et cetera, will make a difference in terms of getting information.
Where's the Hyde Park spot and what are its hours?
That's something that we're working on securing, and as soon as we have that, we'll be sure to start.
Undetermined.
We haven't started the planning process yet.
So we've got two more questions, and we're going to answer some of the questions that were asked at the beginning. I have my partner, I think back there is the one who's going to call.
There are three things I really want to bring to the point. First is, when are we going to see non-English speakers have one of these meetings? Okay?
What if they don't want to? Oh my God. I was the non-English speaker.
Nobody has approached anybody who, the majority of the businesses now in Rosendale Square are owned by Latinos. Okay? Then the other issue is, why is our parking being proposed to be taken away from Rosendale Square, especially for those who are disabled, such as myself, and getting older? Okay? We need to have that parking. Okay? It's very different to go from the to go from the station to park and then slide down the hill and go to the business. It's very, very different. Last thing. That's all I can remember.
So the quick answer to a number of questions. The first ones had to do with us, had to do with translation. So in each of the meetings we've had about Squares and Streets so far, we've had translation available. We're going to continue to do that. At the meetings that I've attended, we had both Spanish, and in the case of the Mattapan meeting I was in, we had Creole translation as well. We're committed to that. We have also had, as we have in a few neighborhoods for the plans we've recently completed, we've had Spanish language meetings that are where the entire meeting is conducted in Spanish. So we're going to continue to use strategies like that to make sure that we are communicating. So I got time for one more question from this side. Gentleman in the back. There's a pointing at you, sir. A blue jacket standing against the wall. Yeah.
Hey everybody, I'm a resident, 12 years in Hyde Park. Hope everyone can hear me. I've got a two-part question. So the first part, anyone from the MBTA, raise your hand if you work for the MBTA in the room. So just, I'd like to really strongly request a partnership as part of this process to involve the MBTA, because it seems the only way it's going to be successful is to incorporate them directly into the design. Thank you.
And to make sure the square is connected to the MBTA and the existing lines are leveraged to their maximum possibility. So just want to make that point because I think it's really important. And then second point, I heard mention of consistent zoning, but also block by block zoning, which sounds to me to be kind of opposite. If you could maybe elaborate on how exactly those make sense together.
Sure.
And thank you.
Sure. So what we're anticipating doing is, as I mentioned, we're going to add a series of zoning categories to the code. And then we're going to, once they're in the code, we're going to have a plan, so 6 to 9 month planning process. During that process, we're going to be introducing the different, what those new code elements are, and people will be able to select for a square like clearing, we'd like this part of clearing to potentially have this kind of height and density, and we propose another kind in another part of the square. It's not going to be necessarily block by block, but it will be, could be 4 or 5 different heights in one square. So what I'm realizing is that we've probably got a lot more questions, but I think that was the last one I was able to get. Do one more Zoom question, then we're going to answer the questions of the conveners, and then we'll go.
Just a couple thoughts to this set of questions as well in terms of the MBTA. We are eager to reach out. They have a lot on their hands right now, but this is also the first time, I think maybe ever, that the city has dedicated Boston Transportation Department staff who are focused full-time on being liaisons to the MBTA and having a close working relationship with them. So I know our transportation efforts will be involving folks who are in regular contact with the MBTA and know about their plans. And then the consistent versus customized point, yeah, sorry if I misspoke, block by block versus chunks of the district. But the larger point is that rather than having decisions be made building by building separately from each other, even if there's customization within the district and there's a bunch of different chunks of the district and how it's, the corridor and how it's divided up, you're looking at all of that at the same time together and choosing for it to look in the sort of blocks that it's put together that way, rather than just having that building come up a certain way and then the other one a different way because they went through a different process.
We're going to take a Zoom question.
How many folks are on Zoom?
74.
54. 74.
For the last question, we have from Eileen Velez, and it says, I'm on Hyde Park Ave between Akiki gas station and West Street. How will this impact our block?
So I don't have the benefit of a map in front of me. So I think the person on Zoom should be advised that, it's probably going to be part of the area that's considered for, or near the area that's going to be considered for higher zoning. So I encourage them to make sure that they put their information in the chat and that they come to the first engagement and kickoff, because it's going to be important for us to hear their opinion. So I think just to start the process of closing, Mayor, did you want to, I think you would ask that we begin addressing some of the questions from the conveners who asked questions at the beginning before we adjourn.
recommend, okay, how many folks still have questions? We're not going to be able to get through all of them tonight, but here's what I would suggest, if maybe the staff could help facilitate this. Anyone who signs up on the sign-in sheet in the back with your email and contact information, we can send email back out to everyone an email address that will be the place. If you then email your question to us, we will get you a response back, and we can even post all of them together or send them collectively back to the organizers so that everyone can see the responses. If you don't prefer email, if you don't want to use email, we should figure out what the best way, maybe through the organizers, is of collecting some of those questions as well, and then we can find a way to address them. I want to make sure that everyone's questions get answered, but I also know we're not going to be able to have a fair way to divvy up who gets to go now versus later. So I think we're just going to cut it on the in the room questions, and we will find a way for this to be received and to get a response back.
So, since Mayor just spoke about what we're going to have to do with questions, I'm thrilled about how many people have come tonight and all the comments. I did want to try to answer was one of the questions that was asked by the conveners. So we do have a series of metrics we've begun to introduce into the process. So we had a series of community meetings starting in September, 5 community meetings, and we measured all the input from the folks who attended those. We had a series of 24 office hours where people were able to come to online, speak with BPDA staff about the work. We've been measuring. So we also took thousands of comments and added them, and read them, and then made changes to the process we were using to do that. So I did want to highlight that we are with our work, and we're planning to do more of that.
I just have one very quick question, and I don't mean to disrespect you by interrupting you, but I wanted to find out how many people in this room came to this meeting with the idea that we could convince the city of Boston to slow down the process of squares and streets. How many came to the meeting for that reason? How many people came to the meeting tonight to ask to slow down this process? I came to the meeting for that reason, because I want the people who are not here to find out more about squares and streets is going to do to the neighborhoods. And I don't see that happening. I see this as a fluff piece. You're making nice. I need to add to what you're saying. This is critical. We're being told that there'll be 6 months of planning.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Please let me say this, it's really important. We're being told that, yes, you will give us many more months of planning. But my understanding, and please tell me if I'm wrong about this, my understanding is that the BPDA board and the ZBA board are going to decide first and then plan with us for 6 months, so that we'll get to have choices, but they'll only be the choices that have already been decided on. That's right. And that's a problem, because what if they don't fit for us? That's what we've been told.
Let me be wrong by saying that I am probably the number one advocate for what you're talking about, and communicating these ideas to the community, I think needs to be robustly improved. So I'm really, but we also have to be cognizant of the fact that this is a meeting where we all get to talk, but we can't be here all night. So it's not about like silencing voices. Like the mayor and Chief Jemison came here, and they have even extended time because we were told 8:15. What time? So no, but I really want to be very clear. Like, the question I have is about metrics, and my question about metrics has to do with what percentage of people of Hyde Parkers, Dorchester, West End, what percentage know? Because I know a lot of people that do not know about this, right? And then out of that, I'm a civil engineer, and it's hard for me to understand what's going on. So If you're a teacher, another profession, I know it's even harder. So the thing I want, what I wanted to ask was, can we have like visuals? Like if you have a model, this is what S1 looks like. This is what S1 looks like. So people can see what this will over a whole lot, because we're really just like I've been to a bunch of BPDA meetings, and each one, different group of people say a different group of things. So I think that's something that they need to work on. And then we need to see what percentage of the community knows about this. Because what's going to happen is that after we're going to have development, and that development is going to turn out to be something that we do not know or people did not understand, and then they're going to be upset. And in the long run, I'm not even commenting on the actual, like, what can be done. The communication is not up. We have to deal with that. We have to be more robust. We have to meet people on social media. Like I said in the beginning of my beginning comments, there are people now at home doing homework with their kids. They're, taking care of everyday life, and they will not be able to be here. These are the community leaders. These are the people that really care. So what about the people that, not that they don't care, but they're at home taking care of them? Those are the things, and I'm willing to work with you, and I know a lot of other people are willing to work with you. So please, let's give the city a chance. They are here, right? Are they not here? They're here, right there. Right? So that's the first step, and I'm gonna make sure that we have more meetings like this, and more community engagement. Come on, guys, let's go. One boss.
Thank you, everyone. And don't worry, Squares and Streets is not going, in the neighborhood process, is not going to be cabined or limited or this and that by, we are putting language of building blocks into the zoning code so that we can have anything to even talk about in the Squares and Streets process. That is to be customized by each neighborhood, and there is no set of things that are going to be off the table if we can't talk about this or that issue. This is about one place to learn a new muscle together, and we are very grateful for the 2 neighborhoods that are going first, because they really represent areas of the city that are so engaged, where all parts of the community are represented through different organizations, and we're going to rely on you all to stay involved, whether you're in these neighborhoods or outside and just learning and following along, and we're going to continue to refine, learn, and share publicly what we're getting through these processes as they go along, so that we can keep improving the engagement. And
Are you going to saying that it's not already planned, that people are going to be helping plan this?
No, are you going to allow the blocks
They
to
need to understand what it is and what's going on, so that they can help plan it in a real, meaningful way.
One of the things that I would ask here right now is whether or not she and Chief Jemison can come back in 3 months or 4 months, so that we re-engage with this conversation. I think that people have tons more questions, are not feeling confident yet, so if you can please come back and engage. We're happy to have you at the meeting. Okay, and if we can do that, all right, thank you. And everybody should put their comments into the comment period, which is the PDA website.
Get this out the way.
Good job, bro. You did a good job. It's going to get more ruckus. I was at the library meeting, and I stood up and said, "Yeah, I remember. If you come to Hyde Park, people are interested in participating. Look at this.